We're looking at Noodler's Burgundy. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Noodler's Burgundy is a very nice magenta ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do my writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done, and we see this really interesting pink that pushes up into that magenta, making it, kind of predictable in that could be very watered down, but I got a feeling it's made of some very dark reds, very dark magentas with some pinks. And the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes confirms this, because when I dunk it in the water, we see a thicker pink line being left behind at the bottom. And then it pushes up and looks very much the same as the original one. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not highlight this because of how the second H performed. I don't need my writing to smear and reactivate that much where I might lose some important writing. The water completely reactivates, pulls most of the ink up. I can see some of the white of the page through what's there. Makes me feel that water is all that would be needed to remove this. Pen Flush did very much the same thing. It pushed a lot of it out of the way. We get more of the white, but I don't think you would need Pen Flush. Bleach did something interesting, because while it turned that spot white, around it where the bleach touched, turned this really interesting purple. Very nice to see. I didn't see that purple in the chromatography, but it comes through with the bleach. Kind of cool. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Burgundy has a viscosity of 2.25, making it a very normal flowing ink. To find my average dry time, I use my writing samples done on the extra fine, or done with the extra fine and the medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Burgundy has an average dry time of 17 seconds, not just making it normal, but making it truly average. Now let's look at the writing sample. I got this ink in sample form to keep my writing samples consistent. I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. With a 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading whatsoever. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but we do get some shading. Not huge amounts of shading, just little bits. It's subtle amounts of shading that go on, like in Fox or in Lazy. But this isn't something that I see this paper with this ink giving a lot to where you think, yes, that's it. 12 seconds to dry. That lets it level out a bit more. The medium nib gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, definite shading. Ignoring where I put my thumb, definitely shading on the over, on the quick, on the brown, on the lazy, on the dog. So this is very nice here. It works out very, very well here. The 16 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, the extra fine gives us no color variation whatsoever. The medium gives us some color variation. It doesn't show as huge here, but we definitely get color variation. And the smear, you could recover. So looking at Tomoe River, we get no bleeding, no ghosting. No bleeding. We have ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. And it looks dull. Just looks dull on this paper. It's probably the tone of the paper. Extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. And 19 seconds waiting on this thing to dry.
I started waiting on it. I didn't have a beard. By the time I got done waiting on it, I had a beard. Medium. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. But it's a slightly lighter tone than the extra fine. 25 seconds to dry. The scrubby confirms we get no color variation in either the extra fine or the medium. And the smear test shows we don't get to recover it. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade in this extra fine for the writing. 14 seconds to dry. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and and definite shading. Now, ignoring the part where my thumb is, where it always gives us some shading, but we still see it in quick. We definitely see it in brown, in fox, in over, in lazy, in dry. There's shading all over the place. But looking at this, it looks like the pen was writing a little drier this particular day. My notes on this, I was using an Ahab, and it was going down very thick, and it's the same tone that I'm getting with the 1.1. So you need to be on a drier pen. Regardless of nib size, it needs to be writing a little drier. The smear, we could definitely recover this on the smear. So being a neat color, I decided to test it with different toned papers. The yellow paper gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. It's yellow rhodia. Looking at the tone, it is definitely darker on the yellow paper than it is on white. In all three versions, definitely darker. So the yellow is going to make it a darker, I don't know, better burgundy. Just darker. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. Super dark. Same exact super dark as the extra fine. That has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade for 14 seconds to dry. But the medium, with no feathering, no spread, no halo, no sheen, it does have some shading. So it does have some nice shading that's going on in quick, in jumps, in dogs, in over. So it maintains some of that shading. It's just definitely darker. Not as nice to look at on this paper. The scrubby shows us with the extra fine we don't get shading. And at the medium we do. The smear test says we could recover this. So I looked at this on white lines paper. It did bleed. It did not bleed onto the next page. It's not really ghosting. Strangely, it bled more with the extra fine than it did with the medium. The medium's not doing horrible for the ghosting, so I'm not really calling that too bad. The extra fine, I don't know. But if we look here, just looking at the smear test, we see that the medium was writing drier. So that would be the reason that the extra fine was coming through and the medium wasn't. On the 1.1, we have definite spread. Definite spread with the 1.1. But we don't have feathering. We don't have halo or shade or sheen, any of that. The medium looks a little thicker, just a little bit thicker. So we have a little bit of spread. Not spread up to the point of calling it a medium, but definitely a little bit more. Maybe just a fine instead of an extra fine. No feather, no feather, we have spread. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. 8 seconds to dry. The medium definitely, doesn't feather, but it definitely has some spread. It's not huge. It's almost a broad, but it's not unmanageable. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows that we're not getting any color variation with this particular ink. And the smear test says you can recover this. And then I put this onto Apica paper, which performs well with just about anything. This has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Hints of color variation, hints of shading. I feel like I need to zoom in a little bit here. Alrighty. Hints of color variation. Not tons, it doesn't jump out at you. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading. It's not really a true white, and I think some of the shade goes away for that, but the extra fine has not been giving a lot of shade here. I think, again, it just needs to be a dry pen. I think a dry pen brings it out. I know everybody wants that super wet pen. Dry pens give you shade. 10 seconds to dry. Medium gives no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and shade. The quick gives shade. So does brown, and fox, and over, and the dog. So shading all over. Looking at the smear, you can see it was definitely writing drier. The scrubby shows us we get no color variation with the extra fine. We get some color variation with the medium. And the smear test, I believe you could recover this. So that's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Burgundy, I would prefer to find an ink that complements the color on the page. And I've chosen Noodler's Bernanke Blue because it's a very vivid blue color. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. What do I think of Noodler's Burgundy Royale? That's right, I've been calling it Burgundy, but it is Burgundy Royale. I think it leans very magenta. Very magenta. I also think that it really holds up in its shading pretty well until you get to broad, wet nibs. Then it loses its shading and becomes just a burgundy magenta color. But depending on the nib you use and the paper you're putting it on, this can be a great alternative to red for many people. Thanks for watching.